Hey guys, Tsufit here, and we're back with chapter 3. I'm waiting for my close-up, Mr. DeMille. Part 5. And we're starting on page 66. Before I start reading, I'll just tell you there was a mistake in one of them. I think it's chapter 1, part 2. I called it chapter 2. Bygones. We're over it. Okay, so we're now on chapter 3. Fifth part, and we're starting on page 66 with a little section called Behind the Scenes. Years ago, I was in a nightclub in Havana, Cuba. I'm not talking the Tropicana. It was a little candlelit, intimate nightclub, and I was captivated by this wonderful torch singer, sequined head to toe. After the show, I went up to her and I asked her if I could perform one of her songs. I told her I'm also a singer. And so I wanted to get the music for it. Anyway, she invited me to come to her place and she would give me the music to the song. She invited me to come to her apartment the next day. Yay! So I go there the next day and it's a little hole in the ground. Actually, that would be inaccurate because it was on the 6th floor of a dilapidated building. There was a guy in the hallway who looked like he hadn't killed all day. And the elevator wasn't working, the place hadn't seen paint in 20 years, and she appeared in an outfit that made the walls look fresh. But I remember this visit really clearly because it was the very first time in my life that I had seen such a striking difference between appearance and reality, right? On stage, in that nightclub, she was a star. She wore sequins. She had our attention. And then her day-to-day life, I think she was coming back and she bought a watermelon or something. And it was a much harder life than what was portrayed in that nightclub. You know, sadly, the reality for a lot of people. Few of us, but she was bigger than life in that club. Now, few of us can live our lives in sequence, nor would we want to, right? It's really, really important to find a way to be a star that's close enough to our reality, then we can actually live it. So comedian Josh Blue found a way to incorporate his real life into his comedy act. He had cerebral palsy. I guess he still does. I don't know if he's still alive, but I imagine he is. And he walked away with the title of Last Comic Standing in the celebrated competition. And what was he going to do? Pretend he doesn't have cerebral palsy? He does. Gordon Painter, that's his another guy, stand-up comedy, he was blind. And he opened shows and he said, well, you smell like a good audience, right? Avis was an unprofitable company until they let it all hang out. They weren't the leaders. They couldn't pretend to be. Why should anybody buy from them? Because we try harder. And that slogan put them on the map. Your persona has to be rooted in authenticity or it will not work. The casting couch. Whatever you do, choose the rest of your cast wisely. Whether you're part of an ensemble cast or you're an entrepreneurial one-man show, you get to determine who your co-stars are. You choose with whom you do business, with whom you hang out. Any self-help guru from Tony Robbins on down will tell you that who you hang out with can affect your success hugely. Would Seinfeld have been the huge hit it was without Elaine and George and Kramer? It's the Charlie's Angels effect, right? The TV show Friends was a pretty big hit, was a huge hit, because all 6 main characters who played these friends, relative unknowns at the beginning, they all had star quality. Hang out with stars and you will shine. It's the 3 pretty heads are better than 1 Charlie's Angels effect. You ought to be in pictures. One of my clients is an old bag, and before you get offended on her behalf, those are her words, not mine. Her description, she runs a hot lunch program for schools, and she came to me a few years ago and she was hiding behind the lunch bag, a little character that she created. The company persona was good, but we made it even stronger by sticking her in a red gingham apron and sent her into the spotlight to network with the suits. When I met her, she was wearing a suit. I didn't even remember that I had met her. She said, I've met you twice already. We cut out her corporate brochure and threw in some 1950s mom apple pie images into it, and the result, she won Entrepreneur of the Year, got national media coverage, and now has franchises across the country. She was featured in Parent magazine. Let them eat bread. One company that wasn't content to sit on the shelf like a loaf of white bread was Levy's Rye Bread, which was marketed with this hilarious poster showing an adorable Japanese kid saying, "You don't have to be Jewish to enjoy Levy's real Jewish rye bread." Others in the poster have included a typical Irish cop, a Native American, an Italian mama. The 1949 campaign, which set Manhattan on fire, was so memorable it's still being talked about today. And the posters sell for big bucks. You are the picture, your business, what you wear, what your store looks like, what your office looks like. That's the frame. So frame yourself well. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the wardrobe department, making an entrance. You don't have to burst onto the courtroom scene in an oversized hat shading you like Joan Collins did. Remember back in the 80s in Dynasty, or Vanessa Williams 30 years later in Ugly Betty, or whatever it is today, to make an impression, right? But there is something to be said for making an entrance. Sometimes it's not enough to just let your natural color shine through. You have to kick it up a notch, not so much exaggerate, but to accentuate. It's like makeup. Makeup shouldn't mask what you look like. It should enhance and complement your beauty, or so I hear. I don't wear makeup, except on stage when I'm in a show, as most actors do, to accentuate their features so that they can be seen from a distance. At business functions, you're often meeting people for the very first time. So if you kick it up a notch, not too much, but just kick it up a notch, so it's not fake, it's unique, then what's attractive and unique about you will be easily visible in a processed and already digested form. Showcasing. Most actors' unions put on an actual showcase, productions specifically for the purpose of showing off actors to their best advantage. Stars know how to showcase themselves. What's showcasing? A diamond doesn't look like much when they find it in the mines of South Africa. A diamond needs to be cut and polished and presented and showcased, like at Tiffany, in a ring, in a 14 karat, gold claws solitaire ring, or so I hear. My second oldest daughter, the one I affectionately call daughter number 2, has been a spectacular chef pretty much since she was born, but at age 7 she was baking cakes, and she still continues to make all these great things. And I used to buy her what I called presentation plates, right? These beautiful plates so she could present what she's making to showcase her latest creation. How you look, how you showcase yourself is key. And I'm not talking about whether your nail polish matches your lipstick or whether you wear white after Labor Day, but even graphic designers shouldn't look like accountants, right? Accountants shouldn't look like accountants, if we're being honest. Professional doesn't mean boring. After one of my seminars, I got 2 comment cards that said they loved the way I was dressed. It was summer. I was wearing a casual Caribbean blueprint top, white capri pants, sandals. They made me feel comfortable, and they made me appear to be approachable. Apparently, the week before, some fancy schmancy image consultant told them that they should wear suits to seminars, and especially if they were giving this seminar, they should wear a well-tailored suit. Says who? Stars break the rules. In fact, stars even make up the rules. Why be a clone? Kick up your heels. Centuries ago, men wore high-heeled shoes before women ever did, and were ornately dressed. By the 19th century, men adopted a drab uniform, and they called it a suit. Less than 50 years later, businesswomen followed, and we became a nation of suit people. Like, we look like penguins. What's with the suit? Dress for success. What you wear does actually matter. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but personally, I cringe at the expression dress for success. It's usually the title of some archaic book or seminar dictating the appropriate skirt length or sharing shoulder pad tips. We don't need cufflinks that must match the tie. Advice. We don't need that. I approach the issue of wardrobe from an actor's point of view, right? What would I wear to communicate more about my character, to make my role more visible and more consistent? How would I dress this character? You have to dress to communicate the image you're trying to sell. And the roots of that image have to be authentic, right? Your audience will notice inconsistencies, if there are any, in what you say, in how you say it, in how you look, whether in person or a paper on your premises. Anything that doesn't add up for your prospect will make your prospect uneasy, suspicious even though he might not or she might not be aware of the source of this discomfort. I met a woman a few months ago when I wrote the book, so a while ago, whom I thought was the person who had hired me, right, to give the speech that evening. We'd only spoken on the phone, but upon seeing her, before the woman even opened her mouth, I said, "You're not Liz." I had formed a whole image in my head of the woman over the phone, and based on the phone voice, her mannerisms, her level of confidence, and guess what, folks? Turns out I was right. The woman I was being introduced to was her coworker, Brenda, who was much more outgoing. I had sized her up in just seconds from her looks and her body language before she even opened her mouth. Remember the book Blink? There we go. If I were dressed today in a suit, you'd say imposter, and you'd be right. So dress for the part. In the old Westerns, the bad guys wore black. The good guy wore white. The saloon floozy wore red. Can we say that nowadays? You knew who they were. You knew the girl next door would stick to paisley or pastels. She wouldn't dream of wearing red any more than the good guy would wear black. Although he may not have been a bad guy, Johnny Cash wore all black. He went out of his way to remind us he's not a choir boy, right? By consistently wearing black and black boots and a black hat. And he wore all black. Now, he made this excuse. He said it was the only color that the whole band had. You know, they all had that. But that's not the truth. He knew what he was doing. Come on, people now, right? He was wearing all black to trademark that image that he had. He even cemented his "I've been around" image by, and much to the skepticism and criticism of his record company, by releasing an album, right? Johnny Cash at Folsom Prison, live in a penitentiary. The result, a hugely successful album and a hugely successful career. Do like Johnny Cash. Like Audrey, Close of Camelot. Remember Camelot? Like Audrey Hepburn or Jackie O, back when she was Jackie Kennedy. They were masters of using a wardrobe to communicate their style. The book about my professional clothing style has not yet been written, but I'll confide to you guys, I have never been comfortable in a suit. I have never been comfortable in polyester. I am 100% cotton or linen or natural fabric person, no makeup. You gotta be yourself. Even during my lawyer Barbie years, I dressed the way I dress now, right? You gotta be yourself, or at least I tried to. You gotta know what's comfortable for you. Would we recognize Willie Nelson without the braids? I heard he's 90 something and he's still performing. And your paper wardrobe. Now, I'm not talking about those little paper dresses that kids used to fold into paper dolls, but I'm talking about how your printed portfolio matches your image. Now, I said a bunch of stuff here in the book about your cards and your brochures, but the truth is, none of that really applies anymore because people don't have cards or brochures, and if you do, what are you thinking? It's all online now. But if you're a real estate agent, make sure the picture looks like you and not that you look like the grandma of the picture you're presenting, because it all matters. Less is more. Cards are puny. This is prime real estate. So if you still have a business card, use it and be creative with it, but better forget about it and get on with your life. I heard a marketing type, we'll call this "don't get fleeced." I heard a marketing type speaking about a financial advisor who came to her to develop printed material for a large women's trade show. The client got stuck competing for attention with 30 other financial advisors, but also with vendors of sex toys and bra fitting specialists, anybody that wanted to speak to divorced people, right? Not a pleasant topic at the best of times. So the marketing company came up with a really innovative idea. I'm surprised. But they came up with an idea: getting divorced, don't get fleeced, which they punctuated with pictures of sheep all over the place. And all the sheep were named house, pension, alimony, right? They managed to find the biggest concern of divorcing women and attach an unforgettable image to it. But you know, one man's lamb is another man's ham, because you know how in Hollywood the most serious actors won't even consider doing a nude scene unless it has something to do with what the story is about? Well, this guy, he's a realtor, and I don't know if he's still doing this, but he did. Back when I wrote this book, he had posters all over town with his head on a lamb's body, only because his last name was Lamb. Ooh, no anonymity about who I'm talking about there. Anyway, so is that really related to what he does? So he wanted to use it as an anchor because that was his last name and that's what he looked like. But to me, that has nothing to do with what he's selling, nothing to do with real estate. I don't think that was the best choice. The blue box. The lamb guy could learn a thing or two from the keepers of the box. Tiffany understands show business. From their sparkly product, the diamond ring, to the Tiffany blue boxes, Tiffany focuses on eliciting an emotional response from his audience. Did they succeed? You better believe it. The color of the box has not changed since it was introduced in 1837. Now, I should fact check this and make sure it's still true. It was true when I wrote the book. I assume it's still true. As early as 1906, the New York Sun reported, Tiffany has one thing in stock that you cannot buy from him for as much money as you offer. He will only give it to you, and that is one of his boxes. The rule of the establishment is ironclad: never to allow a box bearing the name of the firm to be taken out of the building except with an article which has been sold by them and for which they are responsible. That's what I'm quoting from the New York Sun in 1906. Now, would the box have outlived Tiffany himself if he kept changing the color of the box from season to season, if he had diluted his message? I don't think so. Unlikely. And this is a quote from Denise Meyer, who was quoted by Stephanie Blackburn in an article called Tiffany and Company, a Case Study. Tiffany wants you to forget the product and remember where it came from. Okay, folks, that was the 5th part of the 3rd chapter. The chapter is called, I'm ready for my close-up to Mr. DeMille. That was the 5th part of the 3rd chapter. And just to let you know, for those who are following along in the book, I just ended on page 77. You can order your own book. Just see the details in the description if you want to do that. You can also order Cases of 20. This is Step into the Spotlight, a guide to getting noticed. I'm Tsufit, and I will be back with the 6th part of chapter 3. And until then, I will see you in the spotlight.